I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like Live right here on Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. Grand Rising, Hotep, greetings. Like Math Hoffa says, get in here. Get in here. And if you are like Dr. Frank Wilderson, who joined us yesterday, and you need a reminder that you don't need to go back to some of those other weekday morning traditions regarding your news or media diet, and you want to start heading over to some previously more important, certainly not commercial or mainstream, but even white left alternative, you need not do that anymore. Granted, it's just me right now holding it down on a weekday morning with I Mix What I Like Live, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and shortly we're expanding beyond that. You'll get the Remix Morning Show 5 days a week right here. So tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, like the ear doctor says, and jump on in. No need to suffer elsewhere. You can go ahead and start your day with us with a little boom bap breakfast. So, yeah, you're welcome. Speaking of Dr. Wilderson, I hope as many of you as possible were there yesterday or have seen it since. I thought it was a great discussion. I thought Frank did a lot to answer a lot of his critics, and at least on some of the basic misunderstandings. And it was, I think, just a strong and very fun discussion. So please, if you haven't already, check it out, share it, and certainly let us know what you think. Welcome, Vote for Miles, as a member to BPM. We appreciate you. And as we continue to expand shows and project designs, all of that support will help. Greetings, Shirley, Greg Bardo, James, good morning. Brother Burton, good morning, good morning, good morning. KD, Roz Elbow, Sugar Booger. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Shirley, you need to check that out. Yesterday was pretty interesting. It was great to me. Definitely please hit the like button at the door. Like I've heard many other hosts on YouTube say, including my man, Math Hoffa. If I'm going to continue biting from him with the get in here, I'll continue with wipe your feet at the door as you come in, hit that like button, take your shoes off at the door by hitting that like button, come on in. Some of the criticisms of Wilderson are bizarre, and the one point we didn't follow up on yesterday so much was that I think a lot of that criticism is personal. Whether it's about his behavior, and I don't mean to suggest something, it's just a general, some people don't like some people. It's not that he did something untoward or whatever, but just in general, or his partner. I mean, there's all of these things get brought in, but if that's the criticism, I think that should just be what is said to be the criticism, and not so much of some of these other claims that seem to not really listen or pay attention to what he's saying, and to be more about how people are interpreting or reacting to his work. So, which is, um, yeah, I mean, yeah. And certainly I invite people to still go check them out. I think we have, I don't know, 5, 6, I don't know, really good interviews with Wilderson at imixwhatilike.org. I encourage people to check that out. Um and and see for themselves a little bit more. Um as always, before we get to the show, we have a number of guests. I think somebody, unfortunately, just is needing to reschedule, so we'll discuss what that was all about, and look forward to having her on later. I'll double check that in just a second. But one thing that I want to just continue to come back to is, again, the support needed for Katia Stitt, who is the program director at WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. And again, as I continue to say, just represents so many of the people we know who don't want the praise, don't get the praise, um, and but do the kind of work that sustains movements and makes things happen. As I used to tell my students in media classes, and still will, is that the people you see and hear in a particular medium or read are often, if not always, the least powerful people in the process of producing that product. Some alliteration there, admittedly, but in other words, the host, I mean, even in this small setup, me being the one on air, so to speak, is certainly in my household is the least powerful person in the process of producing this media product. And that's certainly the case in terms of even public radio. And that is to say that the people who make sure for instance, in this case, who make sure that there is a station, that there is a clear mission operating at that station, who manage all the personalities and the details of the business that keep that operation running, that keep an important outlet for primarily Black people in Washington, D.C. to continue operating. And this is just one aspect of her life, but I'm just saying the people that do that are not the ones on the air. And sometimes that's a negative relationship. The people you don't see have the most power and are not. But in this case, it's the exact opposite. That in terms of the people you don't see, like Katia, like so many others in this struggle, that again. And so anyway, when I see that she needs help, and we can chip in a little bit, and I see a lot of other ignoble, not only people but projects getting support, I want to continue to raise this up. So please share this, and again, remind people that, look, I know you don't know her, but that's not the point. And in fact, it is the point that you don't know her, and should show a little bit of support, just on the strength of not only my word, but of our next guest and many others who come through this platform who know her, but that who are just in general in this struggle with you, who are saying someone else in this struggle needs some help. So there it is. So anyway, please consider, the link is in the chat. I know I greatly appreciate it, and as will she. So as I said, we do have a couple of guests coming through today, and one of whom is here already, and I'm just going to bring him up in just a second. Somebody known to everybody, or should be known on this platform and beyond. someone I've been able to work with for a long time, thankfully, who also has done a lot of work for a long time at WPFW in Washington, D.C., who is a member of Pan-African Community Action, a member of Black Alliance for Peace, uh, formally at least, and still working with those politics, a member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, all around good brothers, somebody just constantly in the community doing good work, hosts Voices with Vision Tuesday mornings on WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. And of course, I'm talking about my man, Netfa Freeman, back from some what sounds like a fascinating organizing tour throughout Central and South America, at least as far as I'm aware, and look forward to hearing about that. But welcome. Good morning, my man. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I hope my audio stuff is up to par. Sometime
It's a little low. It sounds a
oh,
little
it's
low
low.
to me, but
Yeah, I
but
thought so, but I don't know what to do
but
about it. I have
I don't either. I'll
the
just turn up my
amateurish.
volume. How about that? How about
Yeah,
that?
let's see if I can do something. Yeah, I mean, can
But
I?
we'll
Oh, how
we'll
about
work
that?
with it.
Does that help? One, two, three.
Not necessarily,
No,
but
what does that
I
do?
mean
Why
it's
don't
not
I?
horrible.
Okay,
It's just
all
not
right.
ideal. That's all. And that actually
I
started to
want to
sound
make
a
it
little bit
two.
better.
One, two, three.
Yeah, you sound pretty good.
Okay.
You know.
But thank you, man. It's
Um,
always a pleasure to be on, chopping it up with you. Like you said, we go way back, and hey,
like what do they say? We go way back, like hairlines and car seats.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely my hairline.
I hear you.
Anyway. But seriously, just real quick, I put you on the spot a little bit. I know you worked with Katia for a long time, and I think you said a little bit about her on here with us before. But this point that I'm trying to make, that I don't think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know her who aren't
Right,
from DC or working with PFW or in the jazz community even. But she to me represents perfectly that kind of person that we have to support when they need it, because they're not going to be known. She doesn't want that kind of attention for herself.
right.
So anyway.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Katia Stitt is the program director of WPFW, and program directors are invariably behind the scenes, and Katia does it as, I mean, just understanding the mission. That's exactly what she applies to it. Just trying to fulfill the mission of PFW, and everything else is a I don't even know if you call it a perk, because the people are
Right.
underpaid. The staff, like, you can't even call it that. But and we have to, like you said, a lot of people may not know her unless you're in that orbit, because that's not, and some people in the orbit. But I guess if you listen, you're going to hear her voice, because she has to step in a lot of times and help us pitch for funds and get on there and do certain things. So the PFW family is kind of small in terms of the diehard listeners and supporters and the programmers and everything. I guess relatively small. I should use that word, relatively
Right,
small.
right, right,
Um,
right.
and relative and relationship to the scope of things, and the impact we need to be making. But yeah, and Katia, needs our help. We're not really able to talk about that on the air, because it's just the FCC rules and that govern public radio and all that, and particularly WPFW type, or the Pacifica type of station, the listener sponsor station. And Katia would get us in, we get in trouble with Katia if we broke the put the because we put the station in jeopardy when we do that. But anyway, that's another
That's
issue
right. That's
altogether.
right. That's right.
um but yeah, we need to support Katia. Katia Stitt needs us, and she's been there for us, and as a programmer that's always been supported by her specifically, I want to really put that out there. I can't speak for other programmers, but I think, and I have to say this, because my relationship to the WPFW is more than just the show that I could, like you mentioned, I have a program on there, but it's more than that, because I'm doing other things. And the station, particularly through Katia, has been very supportive of that political work that we do. Black Alliance for Peace, Pan African Community Action, anything that really needs lifting up. It's like for Katia is like no question. If it's the right, the only thing that would stop it is some kind of logistical thing. But in terms of mission, she sees it clearly and is like, hey, let's do it. In fact, might even approach me about it. Hey, you doing this?
Right.
We need to be lifting that up.
That's right.
And so so Katia sees it and is out there and tries to really, I mean, I remember just recently and there's so many examples, but I'm just remembering the last one is around the Zionism thing. Something happened. It was when Israelis started bombing Gaza, as they tend to get
I was
off
going to say
on.
which one and when did they stop
Right.
and
I know.
but it's a constant. But yeah, after one of the restarts, she did what now?
Well, she outside of the stations, so because people programmers like some programmers like Shai Wanana and even oh gosh, Collision with Dave Zirin and all that, and even of course Voice with Vision, we're anti-Zionism, and put it out there. But outside of being a programmer and a WPFW, organized a rally in Tacoma Park, not solely Tacoma Park, not solely, but got with some people and was one of the driving forces with that, and was just passionate about, hey, we got to do something right now, and it's just and push that, and so that kind of stuff, and I think we did do a public service announcement, which we were allowed to do, and made all that kind of stuff work. So it gave people in the community who had some, ire about that a chance to express that and put that out there and even build on it, and then we even had an opportunity, or maybe I guess you say that, internally politically educate ourselves as programmers and people in the PFW family about this issue of Zionism in general. But I won't go into the internal stuff.
Well, no, I mean we can well, we can certainly come back at least to that broader topic. But so I know you're going to be here with us a little bit today. So, and I appreciate that because I want to get to nah, man, you're doing us the solid. It's always a pleasure. But and I want to take some time to go through the trip you went on, and you've got some stuff for us to look at and listen to a little bit, which I appreciate. But before we get to that, we do have another guest who's going to join us at least for a portion, and then later we're going to get to. I do want to come back and talk a little bit about Shupavu Wakarima was set to join us this morning to talk about Kevin Rashid Johnson, who's going through another round of nonsense. So we'll come back to that, and we got the latest call for support around Mutulu Shakur that we'll get to as well. And maybe even come back and talk a little bit about the censorship that we as a channel just suffered, where the remix from last Thursday was taken down by our good friends at Alphabet or Google or YouTube, all of it. And the alphabets, I should say, Alphabet and the alphabets, I should say. So we'll come back to that with you as well, because I think obviously your perspective on that is necessary. But for the moment, I want to bring up somebody who I've also known for, actually technically in terms of knowing him, I think I've known him as long as anybody maybe on the planet at this point. We go way back. But someone I've been learning from for at least the better part of the last 10 plus years as it relates specifically to this country's relationship between race and wealth and the divide that persists. And among many other things, I'm talking about the current head of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, an author and commentator on this topic, and somebody, again, I've known for a long time, Dedrick Asante-Muhammad. Welcome, my man, to the show. It's always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, it's like a reunion with you and Netfa.
I was
with the IPS. That's amazing.
I was gonna say that's right, because you worked with IPS with Netfa. That's right.
Yeah. That's
all
great.
these-
And And I want to hear about your video being taken down. I didn't know about that. So I'm going to stay plugged in.
I'll start. The short of it is, because a couple people have asked, and I appreciate that they've asked, but Thursday, and I think this is what it is, because of course the email is not clear. The stuff you get doesn't specify, and may in fact be even generated by a bot. So you don't even know if you're talking to a person. But they told us that apparently the video we did Thursday, or the show, broke some rules, I think, regarding I think they're saying regarding COVID, and I think it's because we had Brother Hayru on in a conversation with Kalanji, who was, I don't remember him aggressively going against what is being said about COVID and vaccines, but he was offering a natural alternative. So as I was saying yesterday, I am vaccinated. I support the vaccine. I've gone out on that limb and brought my crew on to explain why we reached that conclusion. That is the doctors, and the medical professionals that I know. I stand, I hear what everybody's saying. I've been getting a lot in response to that, and I hear you. All I'm saying is, despite my position being what it is, I do not think we should be getting censored because others may have a different view. And I may not agree with the view, I may not support the view, but I damn sure don't want Alphabet and the alphabets in Google determining what we are able to discuss and how we discuss it. Because again, it may be in this case that I think that that I might agree that the message not be censored, but not be supported. I don't know. But we all know that eventually that lens gets pointed at particularly radical politics and the most left of us for that censorship lens. So I didn't support Trump getting banned. I don't support this getting banned. I don't support any of that. But that said, they haven't responded. We did appeal it, but it's.
I wanted to go back and look, so I can't go back and look at that one.
No, you can't. Oh, and that's what I think is now. We already know that the CEO of YouTube, I'm getting her name at the top, she's already come out on record and said we, meaning YouTube, is going to aggressively and continuously look to support what they claim are the standards for news. That they're going to be more aggressive in censoring anti-standard news, and their algorithms are powerful and impressive. So I don't know if this was a person that saw it and said, "Hold up, we're taking it down." I don't know if it's a bot that caught some language that sounded funny to it and took it down. Mm-hmm. They don't explain it clearly in the email. They don't in the appeal has been several days now, at least. Granted, it's over a weekend, so we'll give them a few business days, but that's what it is. So,
is there? I mean, I know it's all complicated beyond my understanding of. But is there a way you all can sometimes download some of your shows, either visually or audio, or audio someplace else? And so
now we have it. Yeah. So okay, that's a very good question. So we do have the video. So we can download it. So when we stream, we use StreamYard, who I've been very loud and complaining about with my connection stuff issues, but the Ethernet cord has seemed to help anyway. But and when you stream through StreamYard, it does save the video for you, and then you can download it and keep it. But if we have another, and this is something we have to talk about and think about and expand to, I think. But if we wanted to put it up on another platform, we could. It's just that YouTube, being the biggest one, has said it can't be there. So technically we do have it and could, offer it up in some other way or some other, and we are working on that. And actually,
because I assume that this will be the first. I don't wish this upon you, but this won't be the first of one of your broadcasts being taken down as the Google people start figuring out more and more what is deemed appropriate discussion that is allowed on the internet.
That's my suspicion. That's my, and then there's already other things that I think we can identify. Like there's because there's the taking down the videos. There is the slower distribution of the videos, the promoting of the videos. It's a real kind of scandalous setup, and a sophisticated censorship model. Really, that's what all it really is. Even before they get to the level of taking it down, there's a whole set of processes that can redistribute your work, and out of popularity. So anyway, but Dedrick, you said we wanted to actually start a more regular visit from you to this platform to update us on the work that you do on a regular basis, and I'm happy to start rolling that out now, in the sense that you had some new news on the state of Black labor that you wanted to share. I will again put the link to the paper I was happy to work with you and others on regarding Black entrepreneurship pre and post COVID. But anyway, what you got? Yeah. What's the latest? What's going on?
Well, let me also apologize for my lack of lighting. This is my first day in my office in DC, and so like I don't even have this all set up correctly. But eventually, well, okay, and also right on. To clarify, I'm not the head of NCRC. I am a head of a division of NCRC, membership, policy, and equity. But there is a president and CEO who is above me. But whatever. That's just a small point.
Well, it just feels like you're running it. You do so much, and I hope they recognize that it feels to many of us like it's you running the thing over there.
I enjoy my salary. I'll make no comment on that. But yes. And I thought it would be. I used to work at the NAACP years ago, head of their economic department, and used to do a kind of monthly write-up based off of the new labor stats. They'll come out monthly, right? Unemployment, labor, and thought that would be a fun thing to do on Black Power Media, my favorite, I don't know what you call it, but favorite network of shows on YouTube.
That works.
And so, there was an interesting, it comes out, what is it? The first Friday, I guess, of every month. And so there was some interesting numbers that came forward. A lot of celebration of 943,000 new jobs are increased in July. Unemployment rate as a whole going down from 5.9% to 5.4%. And that's interesting in itself. It's how up and down unemployment rate for the country as a whole has been. See, April was 6.1%, then it went down to 5.8% in May, went back up to 5.9% in June, just a little bit, now 5.4%. So, there is this overall narrative, which I think is increasingly important for the Biden administration and those supportive of the Biden administration feel a need to get out politically, which I understand that, they came into office, they defeated COVID, and the economy's roaring back. And I think you're going to hear this message yelled more and more as it becomes more and more clear this isn't really true. And again, I'm not blaming this politically. I don't think it's Biden's fault that COVID Delta came forward. I don't think it's Trump's fault that COVID originally came. And people can, I think Trump is crazy in a lot of ways, but still, I think honestly, our public health system is so poor in this country that, no matter whatever establishment president we had, you would have had, a devastating COVID experience as we've had for the last year and a half or two. But anyway, I think this is the big story around the labor, the economy, is that they want to say the economy's coming back. But, I think July, and his Biden's whole phrase is build back better, right? And I think what we're going to see is
neoliberalism, build neoliberalism back better.
That's it.
Well, and I'll give build back better was first I laughed at it because it sounded silly to me, but then I understood that this was their outreach that we are going to address the buzzwords now, structural inequality, racial inequality. So we're not just going to build back. We're going to build back better, meaning we're also going to address racial economic inequality. And I actually did an op-ed in December of 2020, said, why Biden needs to build back better than Obama. Because I was highlighting, again, because people, like to have Obama as, the savior that fixed everything. And it looks even more real after 4 years of Trump. I get that. Like, it's hard to, feel like that wasn't a great time, but did some analysis just overall with wealth, with home ownership in many key ways. for African Americans, our wealth never got back to the pre-recession level under the Obama administration, right? Our wealth was, about $7,000, median wealth $7,000, which is very low. Keeps the majority median wealth, meaning 50% of African Americans had less wealth than that, 50% had more. And pre-recession, 2007, pre-Obama, it was about $7,000, which was very poor, asset poverty. And throughout the Obama administration, we never got back to that point, right? Like we hit record lows of, I think, $1,600 median wealth. I think maybe went up to around $3,600. But obviously, we all understand if you're out of work for a month, that could wipe out, this. And this $3,600 of median wealth includes equity in your home, right? So it's not like you have $3,600 just laying up, in your savings account or in your mattress. It was like taking all of your assets and then minusing all of your debts, and that's what you had left over for the median for African Americans. So, I think it was.
But he does have a nice house.
Who?
He is celebrating a big 60th birthday party, Obama. So let's at least be fair and balanced here, Dedrick.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to bring up that he finds it appropriate to have hundreds of people over at his party at the resurgence of COVID. But hey, I
still think Pearl Jam is the biggest questionable act or decision of that whole thing. Like you have all of this money and power. Why is Pearl Jam the band? And I like Pearl Jam. I'm just
that's the thing. I kind of like Pearl Jam too.
Of all of, but still, if you have the world at your feet and you're turning 60, that's not who I'm calling. So to me, of all that he is doing, that is the most questionable.
Well, I mean, again, if you want to critique his music selection, what's also weird is that John Legend and Erykah Badu, and I'm sure many other people I don't know, were there. Like, so they were at the party, and you still had Pearl Jam being, again, I wasn't at the party.
Deep.
I don't really know who played. And
maybe they said, I don't feel like playing tonight, Barry. I want to just listen.
And I mean, I think Questlove was even did the menu I read somewhere. I don't know why I know these random
I'm trying
facts.
to be the fly on the wall with that conversation with Erykah Badu and all that.
Yeah, I want to see what Erykah might like Pearl Jam too. I mean, she might.
That ain't what they were saying.
I know Erykah probably wasn't saying that. Why are those motherfuckers up there and not me? Anyway.
But again, kind of this whole, I was trying to highlight that Black people didn't do very well under Obama, and that that we need under Biden. And I thought actually there was a possibility because Obama gets a pass for being the Black guy, the cool guy with a Black wife, what have you. I thought, Biden being, historically a conservative Democrat that, wanted to lock up the Black population and what have you, that he'd have to do more. And I think, at least rhetorically, he has been putting forward more, that he's going to do more. But again, I think the most recent numbers are showing that we're not building back better. I think at best, and I think this is actually overly optimistic, we're building back the racial economic inequality that we've had in this country for the last, since its beginning, but, pretty similar for the last 30, 40 years, right? Where Black unemployment is around 8.2%, right? That 8.2% for the nation, the whole country would be going, would be screaming about a recession and what a horrible economic time. And, we are, supposed to be celebrating an 8.2% unemployment rate. Though Reuters, I thought, did an interesting analysis around why the drop in U.S. Black unemployment rate may not be good news, and was the only place I saw that noted that the main reason for Black unemployment declining is not because Blacks got more jobs, but because more Blacks left the workforce, right? Because unemployment only measures those who are considered actively looking for work. If you are not officially actively looking for work, then you're not considered part of the unemployment numbers. And Reuters is the only one that noted 250,000 African Americans left the workforce. And most other communities, whites, Hispanics, and Asians, saw an increase in their workforce. So even the drop in Black unemployment to 8.2%, which should be, called screams of recession, is underplaying how bad the employment situation is for African Americans. So anyway,
if a whole bunch of people just give up, if they're so crushed by their experience and trying to work, or they realize the jobs that they are offered won't bring them enough to survive, and they just give up, that is seen as a benefit to the unemployment numbers. That
right.
improves the numbers somehow.
Well, and
for the confusion,
yeah, and a lot of people, are like, oh, well, that's crazy. Why do people just give up? I mean, but people know that's not crazy if you live a real life, right? Because oftentimes, it can be, it might make more financial sense for you to stay at home and watch your kids than you try to go get a job. If your job's only paying $10, $15 an hour and childcare is costing $20 an hour, it probably makes more. Or even if your job gets you $25 an hour, is that extra $5 an hour really worth?
Right.
Leaving your family every day, being away from your household, not being able to watch the kids the way you want to. So there's many reasons. And two, some people leave the workforce, but do side gigs where they're paid in cash, right? And that just might be more profitable. So there's a whole bunch of reasons to quote unquote leave the workforce. But it is clear that a community is more economically viable when it's officially has work, because that official work usually is more likely to have benefits and these types of things. So anyway, just highlighting that. And again, I think the best case scenario is that we're not building back better. Is that we're building back, just not better. My concern is with COVID Delta, I think we're going to see this up and down. Like, I think this July labor report is going to be the best of 2021. And I think we're going to see, some declines as people recognize, maybe I shouldn't be going out waitressing, or I shouldn't be going out doing jobs where I'm meeting a whole bunch of people face to face, or maybe I don't want my kids in childcare. I'm babbling on. I'll stop for a second, but there is a positive piece of news I want to get to at some point. But let me see if there's any questions.
Well, the only thing I would want to add real quick is that when you're talking about people might not want to be going to jobs like waiting tables, etc. I was thinking that the summer that, I forgot what year it was, but the summer that Ken Griffey was going to break the home run record, but they went on strike.
Yep.
I was working at a dive bar outside of DC, off the books.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's also that people, and I remember, I was going to work almost every day, but I wasn't getting, I was paid under the table. So as the unemployment numbers would show, I was off the grid. So I boosted the unemployment rate, I'm sure, by whatever percentage, by being off the record, even though I was working.
That's right.
So that may also be the case. And I was also working at a job that was not, it's not sustainable. You can't live off of that. You can't survive even as a single person really off of that, much less with a family. So to the other point, it might be, again, people are weighing this. Why am I risking whatever to go work? And if it's not bringing in enough, and certainly not coming with health benefits, et cetera, and all that as well. Netfa, did you want to jump in real quick? Go ahead.
Netfa.
No, it's cool.
Well, I'm glad that you addressed this, because I was thinking of this. I had questions about when I saw these figures and them, getting on television doing their bragging thing. The assessment is the same. I already knew. Well, they just trying to, brag. They're not Trump kind of bragging kind of stuff, but I didn't have the detail. I'm not the economist like you, or is that what economist, is that how you term it? Being able to look at the numbers and be able to give some stuff. I tend to, though, and I'll just say this, and I think, I appreciate the kind of research and stuff that you're doing. I don't usually refer to like what they're doing as we doing it, because this is them trying to preserve neoliberalism, and we just victims of that stuff. This is the byproduct. They're trying to save it. And the beginning point really that both of y'all made is very important. I think it's not really about who's president, who's in, as we say in the Black Alliance for Peace, who's in the white people's house. And that's really irrelevant. And it's just that this thing called neoliberalism and the neoliberal fascism is coming. It's unavoidable. Everything they're doing is just desperation, trying to hold on to an unsustainable, a sinking ship, and then we're gonna experience the fallout.
Well,
from that.
Dedrick, we just heard some of that radical nonsense from these Black Alliance for Peace fools talking about the white people's house. And I reject that, because you were just describing how Biden is building back better. And you were just leading us with a tease to some good news that I'm sure Biden and the good folks can take credit for, that is going to help us. So let's take a pause from the radical lunacy that Netfa is representing, and get to this good news that Biden and Kamala and Black Girl Magic are bringing us. You better stop that. Shush, Netfa.
Kamala.
Shush. How dare you?
Well, and I'm not even clear. The good news, I'm not really sure even. I mean, Biden, whatever, you can take credit for something, but I think this really came out of things that happened under the Congress under Trump, I believe, because the good news I was highlighting was the original aid package. I forget, because there's so many packages, but I think the first multi-trillion-dollar aid package for COVID that did some substantive things around, increasing unemployment. Adding, I think, $300 or $600.
You mean increasing employment?
What'd you say?
Unemployment.
Unemployment benefits.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Increasing unemployment benefits. That I think has really actually increased unemployment benefits, and even increasing those who could get unemployment. It allowed self-employed contractors to get unemployment, which I say, people who want to put forth a conservative line, and Jared gets into this a lot around entrepreneurship, that entrepreneurship is so important to America's economy. I think one of the best things you could do to strengthen entrepreneurship is to make sure that self-employed contractors always can get unemployment, right? Because when you don't do that, it means that if you try to go work for yourself, that if it fails, and most oftentimes it does, that you have no safety net behind you, But that type of temporary measure was taken, and I think it's really allowed actually working class, lower income people to get by what would have been a much more severe economic crisis. It's allowed them to get by much more economically intact, meaning they didn't have much money before, they still don't, but they're not in a much worse situation than they would have been during the COVID crisis.
I told you, Netfa, you talking all that trash about the white people's house. Trump did something good for everybody. Biden extended that goodness with $1,400 more, I think, or something like, or $600 more, or whatever it was. Right when he got in office, right? He didn't quite hit the 2,000 he promised, unless you put the 600 with the 1,400 from last year. But Netfa, if you just pay attention.
Wait a minute now. That was Trump. That was Trump that did that first.
No, that's what I'm saying. Trump did it first, and then Biden came back and added his little bit on. That's so that's what I'm saying. You're hating on everybody in the White House, and I'm showing you there's a continuity between presidents with all this support.
But what I want to add, the one number I was doing differently, you're talking about the money that the one-time check, the 1,400,
right.
600, 2,000. I was talking about that there was a subsidy added, or an additional unemployment benefits that were getting monthly, which is really the more important thing, right? It's kind of a picture if you get $1,400 in a check, but it's another thing if you're monthly getting an extra $400 or $600 on your unemployment benefits. And my only thing to point to the positivity is I think we've shown how we can have stronger economic stability for working class people, for poor people, if we maintain, that should be part of the safety net ongoing. We should have higher unemployment benefit rates. We should make it so that when people should be able to say, hey, this job isn't worth it, I'm going to stay unemployed until I can find something that is more appropriate for me, or I'm going to stay unemployed and take care of my kids because now the state has allowed me to do that. So I think that type of ongoing subsidy to the population, we should be learning that is what we need as a safety net. The challenge is most of that's going to wrap up at least at the latest by 2022. That's right. So here's the negative. We haven't really seen the full power of the COVID recession yet. We're going to see that, I think, much more in 2022. So I think the headlines that we're past it, we beat it. I think you have yet to see the depths of it. And Black people always see the depths of it much later in the future, and it takes much longer for us to recover. this happens in every recession, is that the recession hits as we hit our peak of almost coming out of poverty. And then we go down low again. And it takes us 7 to 10 years to get back to where we were at the economic peak. So anyway, that's just kind of my overall assessment of where we are with the labor numbers. And I think, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in August with this COVID Delta and how that affects the job market.
Well, listen, Dedrick, I really appreciate you wanting to you set up this sort of regular visit because one, I always thought it would be great, but two, I just think even before we get to a point of offering anyone's analysis on how to deal with any of this, is that I think there needs to be more clarity in our discussion about what's actually happening. And as I know, I talk a lot about, there's just so much confusion projected into all of this, whether it's coming from news or celebrity or anyone else. It's just, it seems almost harder. It seems to me, as I watch, it's getting harder and harder and harder for people to interpret their own reality, despite having more access to information as it's promoted anyway. So, Netfa, anything before we wrap up here with Dedrick on this? Any questions, comments on this? Go ahead. Yeah.
Can I spew more radical? No, I think
we have to. If you have to, if you can't stop yourself.
No, it's great. And the analysis to put in the figures you put are very important. We need to know this kind of stuff. I think it's also actually a lesson because what you were saying in terms of the lessons that something can be sustained, or that what was it, unemployment and social safety net. We ain't gonna see that from capitalism. Capitalism will never give us that. So it's a good lesson in why we need to depose this thing and bring in something that's people centered and socialist. I mean, that's my only thing I can say. I think is
I like Netfa's unemployment update. It would be capitalism still sucks and we need socialism.
That's right.
In August,
I won't have the numbers that
September,
you got, but
in October.
See you next week. Right. See you next week. That's it. I mean,
that's basically
I'm just going to say, I think Netfa is tripping, and Biden has just got here. Let's give this man a chance. He gave Obama 8 years to do all the great things he did. Let's give Biden a few more minutes.
Give Biden, was it Jim Crow Joe, another chance, and don't come here, Kamala.
Yeah, and as I'm sure we're going to get to when we get into your recent trip, Netfa, the economic picture there is looking great, and everything that Biden and Kamala are offering is helping, and we should all just listen up. And now that they know, actually, in all seriousness, I know one of the issues that we have is that when people go looking in at the United States from outside, often are confused as to the actual condition of particularly Black people and many others in this country. So again, I think the segue and parallel here between what both of you are bringing to the show today is perfect. So, Dedrick, thanks, man. I appreciate you, man. I look forward to the next update.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, no, good seeing you all. Thank you so much for Black Power Media, and look forward to coming on again.
Absolutely. Take care, my man. Peace. Appreciate you. All right, everybody. Appreciate Dedrick a lot, actually, for wanting to do that, and his work at the NCRC is I'm going to put the link to our piece in the thing in a second. But anyway, so let's do this real quick, and then let's take a quick transition segue and then get into Netfa's trip through the Americas and see what's going on with that. I mix what I like. Told you it was quick. That's how we're doing it. So Netfa,
yes, sir.
Tell us about this thing, man. So you tell us where you went. Tell us, what happened, what we need to know. What is the news, my man? And anything that you could tell us about the nature of this trip. And in fact, I'll let you start there. Go ahead.
Well, it was. I mean, it wasn't a trip through the Americas. It was, but basically just Nicaragua, which yeah. But I
Well, maybe
think
I'm projecting. It felt like you were going all over the place, but
right all over the place in
anyway.
Nicaragua. I did. We did travel the what's you call it, the length and breadth of the country, at least from the Pacific to the Caribbean coast. And then in between there, it was really so. Let's start from the beginning. This was a delegation. I was part of a delegation, at least for the first 5 or 6 days. There was a delegation of the Alliance for Global Justice. It was about how many of us? Eight. I want to say 8, but I think it was less than 8 people. Like 6 of us or something like that. And different. Most of the people were from the U.S. I think. And I don't know if you know Dan Kovalik, who does a lot. He's an international lawyer and international human rights lawyer, I think. And he does a lot of work. He's been around for a while. I know him for a while. He was on the trip. This sister we're looking at right now, Camila. Oh, how could I not remember Camila's last name? I've been following her work. She used to work for Telesur. Now she has her own network and in Bolivia. They're reporting in Bolivia, and that was my first time meeting her. That was a really pleasure. But anyway, we went there. Basically, the idea was to see. We know that the propaganda against Nicaragua is getting ratcheted up. The sanctions, they're leveling sanctions against the country. This whole, if people remember, this troika of tyranny that the Trump administration had announced, meaning Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. They're really still going forward with that. And so what the delegation was there to do was to, go and see things for ourselves and be able to not have to be able to be voices that can lend some firsthand accounts of things, of going throughout the country and talking to people and getting testimonies and witnessing things. And that's what it really was for. And so we did that. We did a lot and we saw a lot. And the what you're showing there is we even were able to, as we thought about it, and this was kind of an afterthought, it came together really well, surprisingly well, is that we said, well, first to start off is we should make a statement about what we're viewing here. And this was almost toward the end. I think it was almost toward the end. We still had a couple places we saw after that. And so we crafted this statement collectively, as in somebody wrote a draft. You know how these things, I don't know if you know how these things go, right? Draft, and everybody weighs in and puts it on it. And then somebody translated it got translated into Spanish, French, and I think that's it. And it's English. And then somebody, because of some contacts on in the country with the media, said we should do a press conference. We should call a press conference, let people know that we're here. And the aim is basically to, just get it out there as much as possible. So we were able to secure a venue and get a call out to all the Nicaraguan media to come. And that's what you were just showing. And so we and I only remember the name of the venue. It was a friend of the host who's out, and that we had this, this press conference. About 8 different media showed up: television, radio, probably print, and the television is the most visible because they got the cameras all set up and everything. But people sit around in there, and we held this press conference, and we basically just read the statement in both English and Spanish. I read the first for the English. I read the first half of it, and then Camila read the second half of the English, and then somebody did the same thing for Spanish, and then took questions, allowed them to just ask us questions afterwards, and it went very well. So that was the delegation. We were able to go visit Masai, Esteli, Granada, different places. We were able to see a little bit about, and Masai, since you're showing that image, that was, some people may recall, in 2018, the U.S. and Western media and the U.S. government were talking about an uprising in Nicaragua, people's uprising that was responding to the dictatorship of the Ortega government and whatnot. And it really was a U.S. orchestrated terrorist campaign that went on for about a month. There was not some people's uprising that actually, that a lot of people were killed. A lot of them were police. It was, the epicenter was Messiah. And we visited there, and the picture you're seeing there, these are some brothers who are actually police in Messiah. They were actually the security detail of the mayor of Messiah. They were captured and tortured. They were trying to get them. These people were trying to get them to tell where the mayor was so they could assassinate him, and they refused. The brother with the brown without the uniform on, he was a police. He doesn't have a uniform, but he's missing his. He had to get his left arm amputated because they beat him up and tortured him so bad and mutilated his arm so bad they couldn't save it. And so he had to actually the most when he was testifying, because we sat in testimony with them, and his was actually more comprehensive, because he didn't just talk about the incident that happened to him. He talked about, gave some political context to the whole thing. And then they took us around too and showed us the burned out, some of the stuff that were burned out and bombed and things like that. And then also a lot of them rebuilding. They were really rebuilding a lot of stuff, because this was, 3 years ago, and they've been able to rebuild a lot. 4 years ago, maybe. So anyway, that's, I'm kind of seeing the images and jumping around based on the images that you were showing. But that was some of that. We were also able to, I think this was the first, I think it was the first thing that I remember. We visited Esteli, province Esteli, and the minister of health that was responsible for 6 municipalities in this, and he gave us this presentation on the healthcare system that they've been able to erect in Nicaragua, and a very comprehensive universal healthcare system. I want to go back, because I'm kind of jumping around, and give a little bit of a very brief history that doesn't go back too far. But I mean, many people may know of the Somoza government that was ruling the United States back to Somoza repressive government. People know the typical story in Latin America, and actually not even just Latin America, anywhere. They support these dictators. I mean, almost anywhere, but in Latin America, it's kind of it has its own unique history of it, because of the history of anti-colonialism and everything. And so they backed him and then the resistance, the Sandinista resistance, were able to overthrow the government in 1979 and come to power. And so they were not able to, keep Somoza in power, the West. And then when they came into power, they were building a socialist program, became the FSLN. That stands for the Sandinista National Liberation Front, I think, in English. And then the United States, people may remember this, but a lot of people don't. I mean, generations, time goes so fast, is the Contra War. So United States organized a bunch of mercenaries. People may remember the Iran-Contra scam, where they were actually, trading weapons for drugs, and drugs making its way into the United States and other places from these drug dealers and from these people. And then they weren't even all Nicaraguans. But anyway, that was a long war that they sponsored in Nicaragua. I don't know if to say long, but it was pretty long. And that they made it clear to the Nicaraguan people in so many ways that if you want the war to stop, then you got to stop backing the Sandinistas. In 1990.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
Because I was just looking at this real because you're talking about, because of course with the Iran Contra comes also the Ricky Ross and the the LA importation, the use of Ricky Ross and his connection to Nicaraguans specifically. And I was just looking at Gary Webb's The Dark Alliance, and I just happened to be pulling this up here. He said, quote, "Like most Americans, I knew the Contras had been a creation of the CIA, the darlings of the Reagan right, made up largely of the vanquished followers of deposed Nicaraguan dictator Anastasio Somoza and his brutal army, the National Guard." And then he goes into his exploration into realizing that they weren't just right-wing paramilitaries sponsored by the CIA, but they were also involved with drug trafficking as part of a whole bunch of different things. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that. It just was right here. So I just thought that was fast. Anyway, please.
Man,
Go
no,
ahead.
that's good. I'm glad you can and always chime those in when they become relevant, because I don't know the detailed history like that. And I know about Gary Webb and his book and everything. Never read it though, actually. I
It's
should.
it's what I always struggle with is is remembering all of the names and all of the dates and
Yeah,
all
me
of
too.
even the FSLN, all of the acronyms. I have a real hard time remembering what is what. So it just anyway. Yeah. Anyway,
Right.
go ahead.
So
Yeah.
so then the Contra War went on, and they made it clear to the people that they to end this war that they're sponsoring. I'm talking about the West, that they were backing, that they needed to stop their support for the Sandinista. Sandinistas weren't able to do a whole lot in terms of revolutionary programs, and because it's a war going on, right? But they did, this. So anyway, they in 1990. A U.S. Backed neoliberal government. Chamorro, I can't remember Chamorro's, a woman. They claimed that. Anyway, Chamorro became president, was elected president. But a very rich, we're talking about a landed family, coming from a family, and even the husband owned like the media, big media outlet, La Prensa in Nicaragua. And anyway, but that was after, that was before she came to power as the government. But that's where her background. Anyway, that, and not only after, from
Violeta
1990.
Chamorro. Yeah.
Violeta,
Sorry.
yeah.
Violeta Chamorro.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And until from 1990, she wasn't the president the whole time, but through the whole time, there were a succession of neoliberal U.S.-backed governments from 1990 to 2006 that really just did horrible things to the country. And so, of course, you can imagine that's what neoliberalism does. It promotes profit-based kind of stuff, and anything that can't do that is worthless. That's what neoliberalism means, basically, by definition. And so, so the people actually, and then the Sandinistas, and actually when they won, the Chamorro government won, the Sandinistas and Daniel Ortega, and the actually honored, just stepped aside peacefully, and which is actually is a first for Nicaragua. All the elections had all kind of stuff. People fighting because they didn't like the results and all that kind of stuff. They said, no, well, okay, we'll honor the results, even though there's a lot of stuff that they could have raised as impropriety. Anyway, so throughout that, they kept running. They were political power. In 2006, they were voted back into office by the people. I think that, and I don't know if this was like a campaign promise, but a couple people mentioned how Daniel Ortega had said to the people in public that if we just had 10 years of peace, we could turn this country around. Something like, I'm paraphrasing there. And so when they got voted in, ever since 2006, they've been on a road that has just like, turning things around. Obviously, not with, without the ire and the destabilization of the United States. They have universal health care. They've been able to get rid of extreme poverty, universal education. Right now, the country is like 80% food self-sufficient. So 80% of the food in Nicaragua, that's even better than Cuba, is produced in Nicaragua. And
I was going to say, what is the percentage? What percentage? Yeah, that's
Cuba.
deep, actually.
Yeah, Cuba.
I was even going to ask about the United States, for that matter.
Oh yeah, I don't even know. But so much of the way United States is. I think a lot of stuff.
Because
I don't know.
Because I just was reading something that was that just in passing that was talking about the United States is that there was a story that came out last week about the top places in the world to survive a real climate crisis, and the U.S. was which was a bit surprising for me, I admit, was only I think number 6 on the list. So like, in other words, all the richest people in the world are trying to get to like Norway, I think was number 1 for in terms of like building bunkers. I think Peter Thiel, they said, was building a bunker there and stuff, because Norway is believed to be, if you can't get to the moon or to Mars or wherever else they're trying to go, that Norway is best set. Yeah, but they said the United States was only number 6 because despite its amount, its size and landmass, et cetera, and so forth, it imports so much of its food that they were saying that if the global chain gets interrupted, the United States is going to be worse off than people would realize. So that's why. I'll have to go back and look at that now, because I thought that's pretty interesting.
Well, it does make sense. I mean, in terms of, we remember, particularly with this, the United States control over Latin America in this hemisphere, with the going back to the 1800s, a lot of those dictatorships were based on the cash crops of the,
that's right,
of the companies, the United Fruit Company, all them, import. Was not Chiquita. Is it Chiquita?
Chiquita banana and Dole, literally Dole,
yeah.
and
so that's a lot of import stuff. But so it does. I can see that happening.
Sorry to cut you off.
So
I think I broke. I think your thought there.
Yeah, but it wasn't. I should be able to. So anyway, they got back into power, and the government and the Sandinistas have been able to steadily grow back support and popularity. First, it was like, I don't remember the numbers. Let me see if I can find in terms of their popularity. And these are polls taken, and it's interesting because,
so to this day they're calling themselves Sandinistas. That movement is still alive. So
and the people,
interesting.
And so and the people are identifying with Sandinista. A lot of the people, anyway, at least the ones that are like poor and don't want to go back to neoliberalism and everything. But the study over the years and over the electoral processes, their support has been gaining because of the successes that the government has had in terms of trying to provide things for the people. People can see it, and we know the old is a Cabral quote about the people ain't fighting for ideas in anybody's head, they're fighting for bread and butter issues. So if you get power and you can do something, even if about those issues, then people will see it and recognize it. And then so there's a lot going on there. Always able to, and then I did that going back because I was talking about 2018 and the destabilization that they tried to orchestrate. They were really trying to orchestrate a coup, and then that was actually it was. I don't know how you say it was thwarted, but a lot of it's very complicated situation there. And it wasn't just Messiah, but it was a lot of people died. The kind of, how do we call it? What's the word? Counterintuitive, not counterintuitive, unconventional wisdom. That's the word I was trying. Is that the Ortega government actually during this time held back the police and the army from these groups. A lot of the groups, because people were discontent. It wasn't, we're not trying to sugarcoat that and say there was no level of discontent. You can't really have that kind of a widespread thing. But it was also fostered. It was stirred up. A lot of, this is the playbook of the CIA. You can see it in Cuba right now, only with different results because they have a different, situation, somewhat slightly different situation there. Not slightly, it's a different older revolution, all that. They have to do different things. But here, what they try in the playbook is that they're using the most marginalized people in the society. And I think actually, I don't know if you covered it on the show. I know one of the shows you rose up this article by Max Blumenthal in the Gray Zone talking about Cuba and that one. And so this playbook, and then he mentions it in that article, it's the same thing here. And they were talking about it here. They called them delinquents, and people who they, gave money to or whatever. There's one sister who we met with in Messiah, that was part of that. They were talking to us with the police. She was doing work in the community, and she was a Sandinista. She was working with that population, trying to help people organize and deal with the, the marginalization and the lack of resources. And that when the thing kicked off, they captured her, and she was like, they were actually looking for her, and they captured her, and that the only thing that saved her was that the fact that the people that she touched were the ones, and they were involved in this kind of uprising kind of thing. They were like, "Nah, don't mess with her. She's cool." And so I was like, "Wow, that's interesting." But it shows, we know those kind of things can happen, particularly if you. So anyway, there was that happened, and also the government told to use restraint, and a lot of people feel a little bit ambivalent about that because they feel like if you had somebody die or something from that, you're kind of like, well, damn, they didn't save my people, and what was that about? But at the same time, a lot of people are turning it over and realizing that it can be a wise move in the sense that if they had gone in and just did the big law and order thing, which they would have been justified in doing, um, it could have been used as a pretext for something else, and the media would have had a field day with it. Another thing they did was also worked out. It was a reconciliation, truth and reconciliation thing for those people who participated in that, and gave a lot of them amnesty, but a conditional amnesty on the basis that if they're caught doing anything, I think it was anything similar. I think it may have been anything, period, but breaking the law. But it might have just been like anything of that nature again, that they would be not only prosecuted for whatever it is they were doing then, but they would also be bring back the charges from their previous participation in that kind of stuff. And it's been proven, that they have the evidence and everything, that USAID and all that was all behind these kind of National Endowment for Democracy, all that were behind funding and advising, had their people instigating this on the ground. And as a result,
and that literally is the playbook used in Cuba right now.
I
mean, that's the same NED, USA. I mean, it's the same
everywhere
crew.
else. I mean, it's like everywhere they're doing that. It's what they say. That's what the CIA, what they do now overtly is what the CIA used to do covertly. It's destabilization. Nobody, and I mean, it really frustrates me when I hear like so-called liberals trying to give this, say that they want to give so-called progressive liberals, saying that there's the nuanced analysis. We have to not ignore the actions of the increasing authoritarianism of like governments like Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. But their nuance always leaves out this kind of stuff. They never really talk about it. They even will talk about maybe economic sanctions, but they don't talk about these covert ops and their need to instigate these things on the ground with all forms of media and co-opting of the citizens of these countries and all that. But anyway,
and I think there was a name change, but is the School of America still doing it? I mean, how is that still up and running? I think it went through a brand rebranding of sorts.
That's right, and I don't remember the name of it. Maybe you can.
But to the point that you're raising though is that that's always been something that that folks want to leave out. It's like it's saying you want to if nuance is what you really want, then let's include the nuance of what the U.S. is doing to inspire all of this and train people in Latin America to be neoliberal and worse. But that nuance, that's the level of nuance nobody is really ever interested in, because they want it to stop at we have to support whatever Democrat is being offered us,
right? And then also we had to,
and then nuances out the window.
And then another thing that kills me is that we get the media, unsubstantiated media hype of interference in U.S. affairs and elections and all that kind of stuff. But the United States is like, it's not the only country, because actually, I don't know how Britain rules or anything, but I know it participates. It actually has legislation that's designed to have regime change in countries. And these people vote on these things. I mean, it's like it's amazing. They vote on these things and they support these things behind closed doors. So I just want to talk a little bit about the sanctions that they're leveling against Nicaragua. And we know in Black Alliance for Peace that the sites are going to be increasingly or more intensified against Nicaragua, because they really and I need to get to the Atlantic coast stuff too, where indigenous and Black folks are, and how we have they're decidedly Sandinistas. They make it very clear why, and it's very interesting going to Bluefields. I only had a chance to go to Bluefields, but hearing that and was very interesting. There's one that the United States started sanctions in 2018, which was supposed to be in response to this, the crackdown that the Sandinistas had against the terrorists. And this includes what's called the NICA Act. And then that instructs U.S. representatives to international organizations, the IMF, the World Bank, all that, to veto any funding for any projects in Nicaragua. There's no multilateral assistance provided. And the only limited assistance was provided at the 2020 COVID and hurricane relief stuff. Not like, and also Nicaragua does have actually, also along with Cuba, very notable responses to disaster, like hurricanes and stuff like that. They actually have low you call it casualties and things like that, because the people organize. When the people are organized, unlike in this country where people are just incredibly selfish and individualist, that people will know what to do and they cooperate and they do things. But here, there's a people have a, it's understandable why we would have a reaction to authority here, that we would not respect the authority of the neoliberal capitalist order. But sometimes things are like taken to another extreme, like for example the COVID stuff, and people not wanting to wear masks and all kind of fighting people on the plane and all kind of.
Well,
Anyway,
I saw the plane. I saw one of those plane fights. And anyway, some of the pettiness that I admit to, I mean, I get a kick out of some of this stuff, man. People are falling apart, but I saw, and I even saw the clip where apparently Joe Rogan has increased his popularity by saying that this is a fascistic imposition to demand proof of vaccination for entrance into this or that. And it's tapping into that ethic that has been cultivated in this country of freedom, and freedom
right.
from tyranny and all of that. But of course, going back to something else you've already been talking about, the nuance that is lost in that is that there is, for instance, tyranny of capitalist ideology, or tyranny of the free market, or tyranny of oppression and all of that. But when it comes to saying, hey, you got to get vaccinated, you got to demonstrate a level of health that's going to protect all of us, then it's like, uh-oh. And now Joe Rogan is being promoted again as this maverick, freedom loving cowboy who can't be sanctioned, not even by Spotify, and it's and going, and it's somebody, if you, I mean, this is I don't know, man, just the wild thing of growing a little older, having watched, it's the same thing people were saying about Trump. And I know this isn't fair to do and just across the board, but having watched Joe Rogan come up in his career as a comic and on being on TV shows, to getting all pumped up with the steroids and the human growth hormone and the UFC, to now being this, he is like the dominant thought leader in the country. It's kind of wild, man. I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, sorry for that little detour. But yeah.
I think it's it's not really much of a detour, because I think it also speaks to the individualism and the people. Individualism, a lot of times I think people, we can mistakenly think of it as something an individual has its own, or the only part of it is our self-importance and opportunism and all that kind of stuff. But it's really an ideological disposition that goes beyond an individual and how they think of themselves, but also how people tend to look for saviors, look for individuals, and the focus is on individuals. The importance is on individuals, to the neglect of broader systems and dynamics that are happening. I think that's where it goes to that. So an individual like Joe Rogan or anybody who can protect this individualism, is even if you disagree with them, people will see. Like, for example, we'll see the encroachment or the enforcement of individualism as being the work of only individuals, but it's really a system, a dynamic system, that's a byproduct. I think, I don't know if byproduct is the right word, a product of capitalism and neoliberalism and anti-collectivism, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I wanted to, the thought was about, the sanctions.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to just talk about some of this, because and I really appreciated the attitude of the people that we met with in terms of resisting U.S. imperialism. It's really, they just want peace. People want peace. They want the U.S. out of their country, off their neck. You can mind their own business and to let them exercise self-determination. And I think, and we experience a lot of that in the United States too. And as in terms of the most pointed assaults against the people's movements domestically are against those of us who talk about, self-determination and, all that kind of stuff, particularly, if we can combine white supremacy or anti-white supremacy, with anti-capitalism, then it becomes a real threat. And so we got to recognize that as this country, and now I'm going off on a little tangent, as this, not even just this country, but this system, global system, becomes more desperate as it keeps trying to sustain itself, that desperation will turn into, it will become, it's more fascism. We see it now. I mean, the Biden administration has actually increased support for the police and had the audacity to call it the George Floyd Act. And so this kind of stuff, and what's happening with the police and the 1033 program and all that kind of stuff, and big tech, as we just talked about, the confining of space and discourse through the collaboration of these tech giant corporations, and our ability to talk on them, and so, I mean, or communicate or use them as mediums. Anyway, I digress. Sorry about that.
No, it's not. It's not.
Right.
So I mean, well, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'll come back.
I just my digression, I forgot because I cut it off too late, is that we have to be bolder too. I mean, we gotta see this for what it is and be able to fight back against that, aggression, particularly in the realm of the battle of ideas, particularly in the realm of and actually we had an offline conversation, you and I, so I won't get into it here, but yeah. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, we got to see some of
Thank you, because I don't remember what I said.
No, it was about, yeah. But I'm sorry, but I guess it made me think of it, is that some of the antics that we're experiencing online, we have to see them as broader than those actors that are in the immediate sphere or the circle of observation of those antics, if that makes sense. And so, I mean, some of the stuff, like I'll just mention it, like this Black Hammer organization was attacking Black Alliance for Peace and community movement builders and all that kind of stuff. And then some of us, we responded to all that. People responded to all that. All I'm saying about that is that we can't, no matter what these organizations that are involved, that are the immediate or the focus or in the spotlight of it, that we have to see these things. And it's not even just that. That's just one example. Black Alliance for Peace is kind of experience, and I'm not just trying. So it came also with the Tigray issue. We were lifting up some issues around the Horn of Africa, the same issues and we also see Black Lives Matter Foundation. No matter what we think about them, they have all kind of issues. They came out and correct on the question of Cuba, and and got attacked for it. I think all these things speak to a contested space when it comes to at least even social media, so to speak, and communications, because it's a very pivotal and powerful arena, and that we have to actually approach it that way and be bold and uncompromising on that until we just get till they deny us access, or something like that, and find other ways. But we also got to be building on the ground, and it's nothing like direct people's contact, people to people, person to person contact. I'm really digressing. Let me get back to this thing.
I don't actually think it's a digression. Because I think that part of your point is, as I understand it, is that the anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, internationalist politics that you all represent is constantly targeted.
I want you to be targeted, and you represent. I'm not trying to get you targeted.
That we all represent. I'm talking about. I was just thinking about in terms of this immediate action, but that we all represent is constantly being assaulted. And I think in this age, that the levels of assault, the forms of those assaults are taking new forms. I mean, it's more, in many ways, sophisticated, more ever present, and more difficult, I think, to assess and to deal with by design. So when I hate even to give them credit by recognizing their organizational name, but when fools run amok and say just the stupidest things about people under the guise of something progressive, because remember, part of the claims, at least initially, the overt claim against BAP in that moment and community movement builders was a nominally progressive claim around supporting rape victims or those claiming to have been raped, right? So I mean, that's what I'm saying.
It didn't start off as that, though. It started off, the
Well,
claim was against the stand against Cuba, and that's people. I think it's important
that's
to
right.
remember. But go
That's a
ahead.
good point.
Yeah.
But even in that moment, the claim, the overt claim wasn't that PSL was wrong on Cuba. The overt claim was that PSL was protecting rapists. So my point is, so even with as I saw it, at least, the whole intervention around Cuba it wasn't around a political difference around a support for Cuba.
No, that's how it started. That was the overt claim at first. They didn't even mention that rape thing came later.
Oh, then forgive me, I missed that. But
Yes.
so what was the political claim of a difference then?
The
I thought their
political
claim
claim
to be
was
anti-colonial, whatever.
right. Their claim was that we were being reformist. One, that we were being led by PSL. That they mistakenly thought the event. This was actually the physical. At first, wasn't on social media. It was an event that was I think it was in Atlanta, and they came and they assaulted the event, and they said that and it was a Black Alliance for Peace event, and that PSL was just like helping or partner, whatever, I can't remember, but they thought, well, there was a PSL event and that we're being led by the white organization. They didn't even bring up this other stuff, and that the Cuba stuff, that we were misleading the people on Cuba because we were putting out reformist stuff. It's not about the blockade. They said it's not about ending the blockade. It's about imperialism or colonialism or something like that. It was
all right. So
crazy.
Okay, but forgive me for that. Then I missed a step. But my point is that even there, the claim is couched under some progressive radical label.
That's right.
And this is sort of what I'm saying. Like, this
more
is
radical
like
than now.
Right. But my point though is that this is part of what makes this time more difficult than any other to do this kind of work and to have these arguments laid out and interpreted properly, because people are, whether it's a group like this that we're talking about, or whether it's the Biden administration, or whether it's liberals who support the Democratic Party, the overt claim is that something progressive is happening. Biden is doing more in terms of an infrastructure bill than anybody has ever seen. He's building back better. This group is saying we are taking even BAP and PACA and community movement builders to a new heightened level. Yeah, because they're not radical now. We're taking them to a heightened level of struggle. In other words, but so to peel all that back and to get to what would be more of a more, now that I think I've destroyed the use of the word, a more positively nuanced analysis, it's very hard, because a lot of these, right, because we're all more revolutionary than everybody else.
Right, yeah, that's true.
And it's the same thing, even going back to this Gary Webb thing that I was just looking at, is that remember Reagan and them, when even their version is, we are advancing freedom in Latin America.
That's right.
So even that old tired argument is rebranded in new weaponized ways today, and couched or being carried and branded or labeled, or carried through nominally radical progressive people. So you don't need a conservative to say BAP is not whatever. You can have nominally radical people saying BAP is a problem, right. And because they are not radical enough, and that will get a certain level of attention where a critique from the State Department would be more easily dismissed. So anyway, that's
I agree with you on that. And then, but it took us right back to where we needed to be in terms of these sanctions that the even so-called progressive wannabe radicals are not really speaking out against. It's like, yeah, we know they exist, but if just because the U.S. is doing something bad doesn't mean you excuse the bad. Somebody even said that you excuse the bad of these governments or whatever, and which it's it's a slick way of saying, it's a slick way of not addressing the pervasive sanctions. So there's a new sanctions sponsored by this Cuban American, Senator Ben Cardin, Cuban Americans and Ben Cardin, and it's called the Renacer. It's an acronym, is Reinforcing Nicaragua's Adherence to Electoral Reform Act. And it's like, supposedly, we've heard the whole targeted sanctions.
What could be wrong with that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're targeting sanctions. So, like, it means the entire government, which would mean, everybody living in the country, all the members of the FSLN. So these are targeted. All the members of the FSLN and their family members are targeted by the sanctions. Now, this means, now, just to kind of give people illustrated, I would think of it. Imagine anyone who's a registered Democrat or registered Republican, being targeted. Not the high profile people we see in government or that kind of thing, but anyone who's registered under one of these parties, or or even both of these parties, is targeted, with some kind of sanctions. That's like over half the population. Maybe not in the U.S., but actually in Nicaragua, a lot of people are FSLN. So you're talking about a majority of the country being subject to the sanctions. That means it says all the members of the police force, all the members of the army, and the police, they carry out, and unlike in this, settler colonialist United States, capped settler colonialism. When I say settler colonialism, I'm talking about white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy, as that's what it means in any place there's settler colonialism, for that matter. And that the police can't serve the same function in a revolutionary country. And how I
was going to say, so is this the United States government actually supporting, in this instance, the defunding of police? Did I just hear you correctly?
Or even abolishing police.
Abolishing police?
Well, they don't say about, but they don't sure targeting it. Yeah, so they got powers.
That's the headline. The United States government supports abolishing police.
Right. Yeah, basically.
That's a great headline.
Or just like, abolishing
just
the police in
Nicaragua.
Just in revolutionary, and they might even apply it to some other country, but that's really what it is, and the bill is, if the bill is enacted, Nicaragua could go overnight from being a country that has handled the pandemic remarkably well and seen economic recovery since 2018 coup attempt, to being plunged into the deprivation of sister peoples of Cuba and Nicaragua. Cuba and Venezuela, the deprivation that those countries are experiencing. And so we know the effect and how intense the not just the sanctions. It's really, blockade. We got to call these things for a blockade, because they're not really just about trade between the countries. We've got to understand trade between the two, U.S. and the other country. It's about all kind of interactions, not even just trade, all kind of interactions between these countries and other institutions, other companies, other countries. It's also includes funding for undermining, projects that undermine them, like quote unquote supporting independent media and these kind of things, independent human rights, organizations and people on the ground. All that, it's active war, and so active war means it's a blockade. It's not just an embargo, and I think sanctions are, they need to be seen as war. And I wanted to there's so much, and I think I got I wanted to get to because I don't know if you had any questions to ask me, but I wanted to get to the Atlantic coast and the Caribbean coast. And I was meant to go over there. After the delegation was over, I stayed a little longer than everybody else, and then made it all the way to the Atlantic coast. Also, we say Caribbean coast, Atlantic coast, where there's the autonomous region, is as it's referred. Many people may have heard about the autonomy of the Atlantic coast. And it's autonomous because, one, it's bilingual. It's like, it was started off as the English speaking because of the English, Britain had colonized that section, or had taken over that section of the country. And, with the whole, I'm not really a buff on the history of it, but going back into the 1700s, the Spanish were able to force the British to leave and abandon that side of the country. And when they abandoned it, they weren't able to make it over there so easily, the Spanish. So when they abandoned it, the indigenous and Africans that the British brought over, and it also had come from, it also populated coming from other islands like Jamaica and whatnot, they're able to, so to speak, and his brother describes it as not inherit, but I guess just take over all the stuff, the infrastructural type of things that were left by the British, the buildings, the cattle, the different things. Is a tweet that, I had the whole conversation. I was doing a whole lot of recording and mostly audio recording because I'm the radio dude, but I had a couple little video clips, hold the recorder in one hand and the camera and the phone in another, but smaller short video clips that I could just tweet. But anyway, some of these discussions are fascinating explanations that I really can't do any justice to, and I'll try to provide them publicly. But once they were able to take over this stuff, they were able to start, and they were basically had to do things from scratch, building autonomy. Or their own survival, really. There's basic survival with indigenous and black people, working together. And that when the Spanish were also, and the Spanish, from my understanding, could not make it there, but they were also overthrown by the Sandinista, or not the Sandinistas, Augusto Sandino, which is the Sandinistas are named after, were able to get well, actually, it wasn't even the United States was taken over in that during that was the 1800s when Sandino came. But before then, they were able to exercise autonomy. Before the mestizos and the Nicaraguans, so to speak, they were mostly pretty much white Nicaraguans, came over and imposed took over this region and said, well, this is one Nicaragua, and started enforcing Spanish and, and other Spanish language and other types of cultural things and institutions on the people. So that's why that region is pretty bilingual too, because it has, the imposition of Spanish. Now, just fast forwarded so I can get past this history, which I'm probably doing a terrible job of explaining, that when the Sandinistas came to power, the 1979 revolution, and they recognized immediately the cultural and social, or just say the social integrity of the Atlantic coast. And it wasn't until I think, Law 28, and I'm not really sure exactly when it came, but it actually codified into law the recognition of the autonomy of the Atlantic coast, the autonomous zone, as being something that should be supported, as opposed to something, in other words, whatever types of, where they could actually learn different languages. And there's several indigenous languages there, not just the English that the British brought, but indigenous people's languages and all that. They were actually able to teach school, and they're actually able now to teach in those languages. A lot of people that speak those languages don't speak anything else. So it's very important. Obviously, we know that. And it's not just the languages, so many, cultural practices and even forms of economy and whatnot are supported now by the Sandinistas, and that didn't have the support before. And so that, you see very strong support by Sandinistas in the Africans, the Caribbean coast or Atlantic coast, it are Sandinistas. They talk about it, and it's because of their ability to exercise. In fact, are you able to play? There's a clip that it's 2 minutes of the brother. He has glasses on and a mask. I'm talking about, and he kind of describes what's taking place after Law 28 was.
And this is
his name
Danilo
was
Chang.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right here.
Yeah.
All right, hold on a second. I think I need to hold on. My bad. I thought I gotta hit the thing to share the audio. No, it's cool. I didn't hit the share audio joint again, which is just.
He's executive.
And since that time, we've been changing the way of living of our people. We've been giving our people hopes to better their life, and our people being walking out of darkness to light. Those 16 years of neoliberalism, our people was oppressed by the system. And we had Afro-descendant community that, since there was founded those communities, they didn't have access to electricity. They didn't have access to health system, to the basic system, not to water, to potable water, to education in a human right. The neoliberalism system used to, the first thing they used to think is about is about incomes. No, they said, why we have to curb electricity to those communities if those communities don't have how to pay us back? That was their mentality. And the government of Nicaragua, presided by Commandant Ortega, says that is not a thing about money. It's something about human rights. So beside to the strategy of the development, human development strategy, that is how we call it, human development strategy, because the philosophy of this is that the development comes from within, is that it comes from our people. So we involve the people, the community, the family in the whole process of development, and that is why everybody take a hold of it, of this process. So now, since we have this strategy, and our Afro-descendant and indigenous people being seen another way, a good way of living in our country.
Right on. Hey, you're muted, Netfa.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
That was Danilo Chang Cash, and he is, I'm kind of blanking on his title. He's the government executive of the South Caribbean Coast Autonomous Regional Government. And so, and I was, sat and talked to him. Obviously, he had a whole lot more to say. It was a bunch of people that I talked to. And so I thought that captured it more. In fact, what I like that he brought up that I kind of neglected was also the infrastructural neglect, that the Caribbean coast is. And so what the region now is being able to realize and benefit from as being part of Nicaragua as a whole, but at the same time being able to exercise their autonomy is also, the national infrastructure that everybody needs, electricity and water and all those kind of things, and assistance to build their own, things that how they might need them. But another thing is which was remarkable. So we traveled by car there. I was trying to go there on a plane. It only takes an hour, so I can spend more time there and visit other parts besides Bluefield. But I didn't, logistics didn't work out that way. Drove there. It was a 6-hour drive on a new roads that they're building that didn't exist before. So now you can actually get to the Caribbean, because before it was just, I mean, if you can imagine with no road going there, that it just takes some craziness, no real road. But it was a very 6-hour drive. It was a 6-hour drive, very cool and smooth. And, we drove there. There was one part where the road had to undergo some repairs because it was raining a lot there. And it kind of something that collapsed a little bit, and it was a new road, I think. So they were trying to repair that part. We also saw on the road, now this is kind of definitely a tangent. So under assault is Cuba, and people talking about Cuba, the news there and what people are talking about is going to be grossly different than, vastly different than what people get here in the United States from it. But also because of the neoliberals and the capitalists, the rulers smell blood in the water like sharks, and they just really intensive turning the screws in on Cuba. You get countries like Nicaragua and other countries, sending now aid, food stuff to Cuba. So we were driving on the way back driving on the way back to Managua from Bluefields, and we actually saw the caravan of food going to the port. There was to be delivered to Cuba, and it was being escorted with the police and everything, and the people standing on the road cheering the caravan, and that was kind of cool. But those kind of things. Actually, also, this is another thing that people often, when you go to places like I've been to Cuba, and that you see things that fly in the face of any kind of propaganda that they can say about how the people don't support Cuba. So we happened to be there the 19th. I got there the day before the 42nd anniversary of the Sandinista Revolution. And so it was being celebrated in Plaza Santa Fe, I think is that right? And so we were able to visit that and see that. Now, it wasn't as big a celebration because of COVID, so they had to really scale it down. And I don't know if I mentioned this already, but Nicaragua has among the lowest COVID infection rate in the Western Hemisphere. And so there's just and they didn't do it with vaccines. And so while I might be a proponent, I guess, of vaccines, particularly in this damn country, I do know that that's not the only thing, and that there's really a lack of a system of healthcare here, and just a lack of a just a socialism that makes us have to depend on something like a vaccine. But they've been able to keep it low, and even to get in the country, you got to have a negative test that you have had to take just before you get on the plane. And they actually, I guess, not from this they required though coming back in, I had to get a test. But anyway, yeah, you got to have a negative test. And when you go into a store or something, there's somebody standing out there going to take your temperature, sanitize your hands, spray your hands, and before you even go in. It's like almost everywhere we went, there was a public place. And so that kind of stuff, and people didn't balk at that. It's like it was just crazy. Anyway, but that was a little detour. But anyway, I'm jumping all over. I'm feeling like I haven't really planned what I could discuss.
No, it's all good. I mean, there's just a lot, and I know that. Well, first of all, we should let folks know that you'll continue to share the details of this trip on your show starting tomorrow morning, and if I'm not mistaken, no,
I haven't decided when because
so
the station is in Fun Drive now, and it's kind of difficult to just I'd have to keep breaking it up, and there's so much. I kind of rather do it when I can have a good solid block of hour, So,
but the point is, you will eventually. There will be more because you got a lot of audio, and I didn't say this when we were talking off air, but if you need, I mean, imixwhatilike.org is happy to house as much audio as you want help with.
Oh yeah,
but anything else, we will. Whatever help you need, because I know you got a lot of good stuff. Because I'm actually trying to make the same pitch to Keto Swan too, because his book notes are all on audio tape too. He got a whole lot of stuff that people haven't heard, so we need like a whole. Look, if Kanye can rent out the stadium in Atlanta for a listening party for his album, why can't BPM have a fundraiser to rent out a stadium for a listening party for Netfa and Keto Swan's revolutionary audio?
Yeah, Keto is actually a great supplement to this because of his knowledge on the history. I mean, I can't even do it justice, so that would be really But combining that contemporary with the current,
and you all just got so much stuff. Like there's so much stuff. And then we haven't even got, I got to get my man, Todd Burrow. Like we got the late Les Edmond left a whole bunch of OAAU tapes. Like we got, I've heard some of the rare Malcolm X meetings and yeah, man, we got it, man. We have to have a whole, so we need a BPM listening party.
Save some fundraiser public.
That's what I said, but I'm not in charge of anything. So
man.
Anyway, but the point is, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I just thought of something else that I wanted before is that so I'm going to drop in the chat, or can I drop in? Can I drop?
You can put it in the private chat, and I can share it, or you can share it in the chat directly. Whatever's easiest.
Well, one thing we met with this brother who is one of the founders of the Sandinista police, Francisco Javier Lara, and he's just one of them. Where the Sandinistas, got rid of it, kicked out the National Guard, pretty much had to dismantle the Somoza National Guard, and then start their own police and army. He was like 16 when he did this. And so when he was one of the people when he was involved with it, and he just described it, I have the audio of that. It's kind of fascinating. I think it has a lot of lessons for us here who are talking about defunding or and abolishing the police and all that, and its relationship to really the fact that we're ultimately talking about a power and a radical transformation of the society that we're dealing with, and on abolishing a structure, and that's, I mean, when he's talking about that. He's not just talking about the police. He's talking about a literacy campaign that they did and all this different stuff. I mean, in other words, it's impossible for him to talk about it without talking about the whole transformation of society that had to accompany it, and that it came about because they had to, they were just like, they had a whole, and in fact, he I think it was him that mentions this. Maybe it was somebody else. He mentions the that initially there were some anti-Somoza people who were anti-Somoza the person, but they weren't anti-Somocista or Somocista, whatever you want to call it. So in other words, they wanted the system to remain intact. They just didn't want the person anymore. And so they supported the Sandinistas or the resistance initially, but then when they saw where it was going radical, and this is like not an atypical story for this kind of stuff, when they saw it was going radically, then they parted ways and started seeking, refuge in the with the United States support, and that's where you get some. Even Chamorro was one of those, But anyway, so this person, he describes the police and all that whole thing, and I think it's very instructive. We also did this before I even went there. I'm going to put in the chat. Let me see if I can do this without. I want to also put. It's an event that we co-sponsored like in October 2020 before I even went down there. So, and about Nicaragua, Power to the People, Policing and Caribbean Autonomy in Nicaragua. And so it talks about the police, and it had these sisters from the Caribbean coast who talked about, and they were part of establishing the police in Nicaragua, and particularly on the Caribbean coast. And I think, that is like, let me put it in this trap because I don't see where. And it's a like an hour and a half long, and it's very instructive. A lot of the same stuff that the brother Francisco Lara told us that they also said, but it was only they're talking about the you see that, and they talking about the Caribbean coast, and that they were women, and they just had a lot of good information. They're speaking in Spanish, but the whole thing is in English. That YouTube, because we have the interpreter. We use the interpreter thing. So Paca
did you want to play some of it now, or did you want to, or you want it just to share it for later?
I don't know. I haven't queued up anything, but I was thinking if you could share it in the chat with everybody. I don't know how to do that.
Sure, I'll share.
But
yep.
If if you want to try to do that, and I think maybe
it's all right. I mean,
okay.
Well, because I think I know. Well, I think we're both running out of time, so I'll But I'll just put it in the chat, and then I'll add it to the show notes for the show so people can follow up going forward. But so I put it in the chat and there.
But we need to look at that, and then I'll make mine available. But I just think that this is interesting when we talk about policing and we talk about revolution, because a lot of us, we talk about our issues with establishment state, capitalist state police, and not really like as an extension of capitalism, and to enforce that, and that we can do something about it without really building something else. And it has to go hand in hand with something else. And I ain't trying to get us. Sometimes I feel like I'm censoring myself, but it's partly because I'm not used to being on a platform that allows me to curse. And then also, I know you talked about
no censorship necessary here, my man.
Well, I need to just get off of that. But also, you mentioned, being one of the things being taken down. But right at this point, the COVID thing was that one. I want to go back and see that. But anyway, I just, I think we need to start being bolder and looking at this future that they're having to face. If we're not we need to be as bold as the neoliberals and the capitalists are desperate. And we need to not, shrink when they come for us and all that kind of stuff. We need to express, defense of each other. We need to express, talk about the system, with unequivocation and exposing its very various facets, connecting all the dots, politically educating ourselves. And we need to be making these, connections transnationally. And that was what the mission was there, because we need to connect with our people. And they were very glad to hear about Black Alliance for Peace, because that's what I talked about. Black Alliance for Peace and Pan-African Community Action, our efforts and trying to forge connections there. We want to try to build a delegation, hopefully, that we can eventually take there, but we need to make these connections. They're going to turn their sights. They've already turned their sights on Nicaragua. We got to protect our people, not protect, but defend the people, and also build revolution. It goes both ways. It's mutual. It's reciprocal in terms of what's happening here. If we want and we should want, and I think people do support U.S. Africans, really. Oh, I was also on a, I know we run out of time. I got the
Now,
chance
shout
to,
out to M. Adams. Thank you for your support. Anyway,
thank
go
you,
ahead,
man.
man. Mhm.
And then, I forgot about, I was able to be on the radio station there. Um, Take a Look Around was the radio. I forget the brother's name. I don't know how they actually. I mean, on the Caribbean coast, man, it was just so beautiful to be there, and to I didn't really get a chance to be there enough, and how embracing the people were that I did meet. And it was really just but they got me on a radio show. I was chopping up with this brother for about 40 minutes on the Bluefields radio, stereo radio, and they were just it was just refreshing to have that conversation, and just people who get it in terms of like talking about the hypocrisies. They weren't stating them. It was asking me, how can this be the case if United States is doing this? And I was able to talk about the electoral system here, or the lack thereof, and all that. And so
Man,
it
I'm
was just
always
like,
happy. I'm not always, honestly, I'm not always confident in its overall impact, but I am always happy to hear when people like you go around the world and can intervene on some level and let folks know, like, we're not all down for this. Like, this is
right.
not, don't get it twisted. We are not represented in the Obamas and the Kamalas and whoever else they're throwing around out here. There's something else happening. And anyway, but go ahead, man. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that was good. I mean, I think it's good, and there is some, and then people have understanding, because they talk about the George Floyd uprisings and those kind of things. They look at they see that kind of stuff, and they want to actually. I think from what I can glean, if I can characterize it fairly, is that people are also they see like the mobilizations and how formidable the mobilizations are. But in other countries, mobilizations are really tied to a long-term, more strategic and tactical organization, and much more so. And so some of the lack of effectiveness or ineffectiveness that they see, they're trying to figure that out. It's like, well, how come those are the kind of questions that you get, and I kind of have to it's and trying to be fair, and because in other places they seem to be able to be more capable of forming like united fronts and having like some coming together and figuring out strategies and tactics that combine direct action with like serious demands and power shifting demands. And we got to talk about that power shifting demand, not just any demand, some transactional thing. And once it happens, they can even take it back, but something that shifts power that makes it harder to reverse if we get it. That's the kind of stuff that people are really into in other countries, and they actually see they're much more clear about neoliberalism and capitalism and all that. And what I appreciated also on the Caribbean coast is the complete, like when I was talking to black people, in fact everybody, but they always included indigenous people in everything they said. They didn't just, oh, we're black, and they had a lot of black pride and African pride too. But they didn't, it just was natural. It was just included in the conversation because the autonomous region is indigenous and black, as far as they see it. And so, and I think, some of those things we just could get lessons from, I think, and then anyway, but there's a lot there.
No, that's what's up, man. And again, I'm trying to be mindful of the schedule and the time. And I know you got a dip, but I appreciate you coming through, man. And we, obviously we'll keep the conversation going, and we'll check out Voices with Vision on WPFW Tuesdays at 9 a.m. and all of that good stuff. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you for your work, man, and coming through. Always good to catch up with you.
All right, peace.
All right, peace, man. All right, so everybody, that's Netfa Freeman. Most of you out there already know what it is with him, so that's why he's got to keep it moving. I'm just going to take a couple more minutes here, just do a quick transition, take a couple more minutes here, and wrap up here at I Mix What I Like Live with just a couple pieces on political imprisonment that I wanted to get to before we wrap up. So Don't go anywhere. I mix what I like live.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
All right. So as I said, there were a couple of things, and unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us this morning. But the Shupavu Wa Karima, who is, among many other things, an activist organizer and partner of Kevin Rashid Johnson, has been trying to keep us informed on the latest levels of repression that he is suffering. Most recently, as they're posting here, Rashid has endured constant abuse since being transferred to Ohio. Most recently, he was transferred to an Aryan wing of the prison. Joseph McAllister, a racist pig at Lucasville, explicitly threatened Rashid by saying the following, quote, "I am an old school dirty cop. We know how to set it up and make it look justified. We are worse than the Klan. We have a unit called J1 where we execute inmates, we starve them, we hang them," end quote. So just want to encourage that folks stay up on not only on all political prisoners, but even some of the quote unquote lesser known ones like Kevin Rashid Johnson. And Shupavu will be looking to reschedule with her and see if she can maybe even come through the remix this week with some of her colleagues and including their lawyer, I believe, who can update us on the details. But and then of course we invite people to support Kevin Rashid Johnson at, I'll just put the website here. You can go rashidmod.com. You can see his artwork, his writing, and find ways to continue to support. And we don't want to let any among those imprisoned, particularly those whose political version of imprisonment, that is those who, like Rashid, who were not incarcerated initially for political work, but who were politicized in prison and then have had that punish them, like as we've just described, and in many other ways. We want to continue to raise them up as well and support them. There is also the ongoing need to support among those who are more prominently known in the political prisoner world, but who, despite that prominence, still don't have enough support. And there's a petition. I've put the link in the chat, and I'll put it in the show notes to support the clemency for Dr. Mutulu Shakur, who continues now over 70 years old, having suffered strokes and glaucoma, stage 3 bone marrow cancer, is still being denied clemency, not necessarily because of whatever he's accused of, but because of the politics which he is associated, the Black Liberation Struggle, Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, and treating drug addiction with acupuncture and other, less harmful and community supportive means. So we definitely want to continue to raise up the support for Dr. Shakur and all of the other political prisoners as we continue to do that, and we'll continue to do so for those. And again, especially if you voted for Biden, the least you can do is sign a petition that encourages Biden to free Mutulu and others. So definitely want to continue to encourage that as well. Please at least sign the petition and perhaps more. So I just got word on an entirely different note. And in fact, I'm going to hit this transition thing one more time just to clarify that this is not, I just want to, not, it's the same politics, an extension of those politics, but just a quick, and then I'll come back with a new announcement about where I'm going to be Friday night.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
So as I said, an extension of those kinds of politics. Now this guy has sort of come up, as I've said, with the Cornel West theory, based out of DC, and something I think, politically could have easily been renamed the Frantz Fanon theory or the George Jackson theory, given the content of the work. But something that I just got word from Brother Hicks himself is that the front man from the Cornel West theory is dropping. Now, we were joking about Kanye West and his listening party, This one is right up my way in DC, right up my price alley, no cover charge. It's got my main man, the DJ RBI spinning, and it is featuring the front man again of Cornell West Theory with his own project. It looks like this is a separate project. I have to let the dirty say amen. God Hates Gucci on this Friday the 13th at Birdland in DC, 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. I'm definitely I'm going through. I'm coming through. I'm getting out the house. I'm coming out. I'm checking this joint out, and I'm saying it to make it happen. I'm saying it publicly to make it happen because I am notorious for last minute cancellations because I just don't feel like going anywhere. I really don't feel like going anywhere. But this, I got to go, especially at night. On the one night, I'm not running around for like a soccer practice or some other kind of whatever. This is it. So I'm a big fan of the art and the politics that come out of Tim Hicks and his crew. I love DC hip hop and that hip hop scene that is under-heralded, under-credited, underappreciated, and is something different and beyond my first true love, which is go-go. This is not that. So it's a different formation of the pocket, and one that I love and want to continue and absolutely support. So big shout out to Tim Hicks. Congratulations on the album release party and for getting me out of the house. So I look forward to catching up with everybody Friday night at the God Hates Gucci listening party. So anyway, I think that's it for today. I think I covered at least the basics of everything. I appreciate Dedrick coming through. Definitely appreciate Netfa, all the good folks who came through in the comments and chats, which I will see later because I am still following my prohibition. A few exceptions notwithstanding, but that should not mean that if you're seeing this now or seeing this later, it certainly does not mean that you shouldn't
Put it in the comments.
because we definitely want to hear it and see it, and all of us end up responding at some point anyway. So it's always we appreciate you getting in there and sharing your thoughts, whatever they may be. Please stick around. There's a lot more content here at Black Power Media. Please get all of it. Please go back and see the special we did yesterday with Frank Wilderson on Afro-pessimism. Whatever you think you thought about it and him, you should go check out that discussion because from all that I've seen, it is truly seminal. And look at me lagging here. See what I'm saying? This is definitely StreamYard. Y'all got to get it together. Anyway, so please go check that out. Please go check out all the other great content coming out on Black Power Media that has come out over the last couple of days, that will continue to come out. Sundays last night with the Ear Doctor was fire yet again. So go check that out as well. And who knows, maybe we'll get our censored content unbanned, and that'll be back up soon as well. So, all right, like I said, and those, as always, like Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. Thanks again, everybody, for showing up and supporting the channel. Please do again, hit like, share, subscribe, hit the bell so you're never missing anything. Please go to blackpowermedia.org if at all possible and become a patron beyond your support of the channel here so that we can continue to expand all that is happening. And peace. See you tomorrow morning for the remix, everybody.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like.